All right, my name is Deontay Jerome King, and this is my author interview for my short story, fiction, fiction short story, The Woods. Um, so when did I realize that I wanted to become a writer? When I realized I wanted to be a writer, I would say it was probably around about 2016. Just things in my life that were happening, uh, writing specifically poetry was a way that I basically um, that was my way, that was my outlet. I was able to outlet my emotions through writing, using poetry, and at a certain point I had written so much poetry I got to about 50 poems total. I still didn't create my first poetry book yet. And around I think about 2017 or 2018, I had about 150 poems. Then I created my first poetry book, which wasn't the full 150. I think it was about 40 to 50, maybe. Good amount of poems, but basically I was writing so much. Once I got to about that 50 to 100 range, I realized, and I was like, man, like this is a lot. Like I got so many poems here, and just all different types of poetry. Whether it's sonnet or free verse. It doesn't even matter what it is necessarily. But I was just writing stuff, from the heart, and basically trying to figure out my typical style of writing. And I noticed that I noticed that my writing carried over from compliments that I would get beforehand, throughout high school, middle school, or late middle school. So like eighth grade through high school, and then even carrying over to college. They're just there are teachers that notice uh, the skill in writing first, or just a difference about my writing. I guess you could say a difference about my writing, um, and eventually, like I never really liked writing like that before. I never really liked reading like that before either. But now I kind of came to my own creative writing. I like creative writing. I don't like writing essays or anything that's like scripted. I like being creative, writing a story, writing from emotion, writing from experience, etc. Any of the fiction stories I do will have some of my own experience in there, just because I'm a human being. So typically that's how it's drawn up. You're gonna the things you experience will come out in the stuff that you create. Just typically, and basically with once that happened, I was like, all right, instead of trying to run from that, embrace it. And then by embracing it, that's where all that poetry came from the anger, the emotion, sadness. I don't cry a lot, so I think writing was my outlet for crying or letting out my more sad emotions, hurt, heartbreak, etc. I let it out through my poems, and then that just carried over into my first book, my first project ever, which is called The Beginning of Knowledge, which is my first project ever and my first poetry book. I'll be doing more coming out soon, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But that is my beginning of writing, and that's how I got started. So, what is your work schedule like when you are writing? What is your work schedule like when you're writing? My work schedule, I don't have a work schedule technically. I'm getting there. Uh, for my next project, I will definitely have a work schedule. I honestly didn't know about having a work schedule for writing, but now I'm realizing that it's necessary. I've seen a few other authors, just watching other interviews and watching just people giving advice and things like that. Definitely want to have a work schedule. I didn't realize that until now. At first, I was kind of just free writing. I would just write as it came to me. I would typically write from the heart. So if I'm not feeling that emotion, or like if that story isn't playing in my head, if I can't see it in my head, typically I don't write it. Once I'm able to see it and I'm able to play the story out in my head, I write what I see, and then I kind of just go from there. So I don't really have a work schedule, but I will be getting one because it is. Next question: what would you say is your interesting writing quirk? What would you say is your interesting writing quirk? I would say my interesting writing quirk would be um I would say it's between writing from emotion. Um, Other than writing from emotion, I would say it's my ability to incorporate poetry into anything I write. Obviously, I started with poetry, but going into my first fiction novel or short story, Confianza, La Confianza, which is the Book of Trust, and then obviously my current project, which is The Woods. Basically, I'm I have this style of incorporating poetry into every single piece I've done, whether a novel or a short story or a pure poetry book. But poetry is like my mainstream, and I kind of just wire it into everything that I do. Even when I'm writing like narration or even dialogue, I try to incorporate poetry. When you read The Woods, you'll see some poetry in there and you'll see what I'm talking about. But I just found that very unique that I kind of use poetry even in dialogue, even in narration. And then I kind of sometimes I include a full poem, like an actual poem, in the book itself, and just kind of solicit it as either dialogue or somebody telling a story or something like that. And then it kind of helps to set up setting, just set up the setting in the story as well. Kind of you can get a background story from it. It's a lot of stuff that you can do with it, but I think that's my interesting quirk. I kind of just discovered that while going over these questions, but yeah, I think that's my interesting quirk. The current project. So now I'm going to talk about the woods and talk more about just specifically the characters and just a brief summary of the book. Won't be spilling anything, but a brief summary of the woods and what it's basically about. On the back of the book, you also have the same thing, but I'll go a little bit more in depth. But I won't give any spoilers, anything like that. I just want you guys to know the characters and where they come from inside his brain, basically. All right. So current project, The Woods. So we have five main characters, not including the narrator. All right. So the five main characters are the children, um, the kids who are more so uh, preteen, not preteen. I want to say uh, Nazir is, I think he's 7 or 8. I think when I was thinking of it, he's the youngest of the group. Nazir is the youngest. Nazir is Amir's little brother. All right, and Nazir is the more interesting character because of his curiosity, wanting to always ask questions. You know how kids are, wanting to ask questions, wanting an answer, and they will ask and ask and ask and ask and ask until they get an answer. He's that kid. Very brilliant, very bright kid. Not taking, he can detect a lie from a mile away. He knows when you're lying, and he would do whatever it takes to go and find out what actually went down or what is going on. Um, but bright kid wants to have fun, things like that. He's that type of kid. Nazir is about 7 or 8, I would say. I have to go back to the book and see what his actual age was in that piece. But the rest of the kids are preteen, which is about like 11, 12, and then into teenage years. Um, but basically, after Nazir, I would say technically it's the twins, um, Kay and Cass. But I'm gonna go to his brother Amir first. Now Amir is the main character. So you got the main characters, which is these five, and they will basically be all throughout the entire book. They're the main piece. They're the ones you want to watch, or like watch out for, watch their story, etc. But Amir is the main character, so he's leading the group basically. He's the leader of the group. He's the older brother. He's not the oldest in the group. It's actually his cousin Shafe, but Amir is the leader. Clear leader ability. Um, very bold kid. He's more like how I was when I was younger. Defender, a little timid, not as bold or not as just risk taking as Nazir, but definitely a leader. A lot smarter than Nazir is, wiser, obviously because of age, etc. Um, but still a little timid. He knows the dangers, so he kind of takes heed to those dangers. Um, but when it comes to protecting the people he loves or helping the people he loves, all of that is out the window. He's as bold as a lion. He'll take on anything to help his people, basically. And that's how I was when I was younger. So that's kind of where that comes from. So next we got Shafe, and Shafe is the cousin. My closest cousin typically is that cousin that's super fun, like the cousin that's just like, bro, shut up, like just be quiet, stop talking. All right, things are serious right now. Stop making jokes. Stop, clowning around. That cousin. That's who Shafe is, and I love Schaefer's character, honestly, because even with his jokes, how people say there's truth in every joke or there's truth to every joke. Shafe is the epitome of there's truth. There's truth to every joke. So he's joking around a lot in the book, but there's truth to it. So make sure y'all check that out. Shafe is awesome. He has a bit of his own story and his parents, etc. Make sure y'all check that out. Last but not least, we got Kay and Cass. They're the twins. We got Kay, who's a lot more live and active. Um, and I believe I got this from the Hebrew context of that word, which is Chay. And for K, it's living. I don't think that's actually how it's pronounced in Hebrew, obviously, but that's how I pronounce it as the name in the book. So, but those letters in that, uh, or whatever that word is in the Hebrew, that word stands for living and active. Um, K is very, very, very active. She is what like the world would say is living. How people say, "Oh, I'm living life." No regrets, not shy on anything, not holding back on anything, relentless with words, don't take nothing back, don't regret anything. That's Kay basically. She's not afraid of anything. She will let you know what's on her mind without any hesitation. And typically, that's typically like the older sister or the more mature sister. They're twins. I don't really choose which one's older or not, but I just we'll leave them at twins. Um, Cass though is the more peculiar character. She's the one that nobody suspects. She's the underdog. Everybody knows. Anybody who knows me knows I love an underdog. Um, so Cass is very important. Make sure you watch out for her in the book as well. Cass is more so of pity. So right. Pity and mercy was the two words that came with Cass. Cass is more forgiving. Cass is more gentle. She doesn't overstep her boundaries. She is the epitome of being quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Whereas Kay is not the epitome of that. She's the exact opposite of that. She will snap on you in an instant, where Cass, she will listen to everything you have to say. Even if you did her dad wrong, she will more than likely forgive you. Don't want conflict, which is not always the best thing. Sometimes you shouldn't avoid conflict and should actually resolve your issues. That's where Cass messes up. But typically, she does the right thing when it comes to being patient or, waiting on something or not reacting irate or, just abruptly right away. She tends to take a back seat a lot of times as well. A lot of people don't expect her to say much or do much, but she's very, very capable of doing a lot of things. As you will see in the book, she's a sleeper. She's a sleeper. There's a lot of people like that in the world, I feel, too. So if you can relate with her, kudos to you. She's a great character. But my favorite, for sure, is Schaefer. I like Schaefer's character. I feel like it's an out-of-the-box character and a relatable character for me, specifically. I don't know if other people will relate to it, but definitely a relatable character for me. But that's the crew. Hope you guys enjoy those five and their adventure in this book. And yeah, man, we'll see how it goes. As far as a summary, going through the characters, I gave you guys a good bit of a summary, but basically, the woods is typically like a game in a sense. The woods represent sin, obviously. I won't go too much deeper into that. I'll let you read it and figure out for yourself. But the woods represent sin, or at least the embodiment of sin. I'm trying to, if sin was active and, you know what I mean, like more visible and took on like a presence, I guess you can say, I feel like it would be like this. Or, you know, like the entity, quote unquote, that is the woods is sin personified, basically. The woods have ability to do certain things in reaction to how the person responds. And that is typically how I write the story out. You'll see when emotions flare up, the woods react. When someone is distracted, the woods react, etc. So you can go all the way through and you'll see these things happening. And the huge thing is just the ignorance to the woods, which is clear throughout the book. So it's not really a spoiler. It's clear as day. People ignore it. People don't want to talk about it. People don't care about it. And it's kind of a bypass, but it's dangerous. It's insane. It's insanely dangerous. And obviously the goal is for people to start to talk about it. So that's their mission. That's their mission. They don't even know it. They don't even know how it's going to carry out, but that's their mission, is to get people talking about this thing that's just taking the world by storm. All right, and this thing is basically playing them into deception and, you know, temptation, etc. Get them in there, lock them away forever. Don't want nobody free. Don't want any souls able or capable to live, basically. The wages of sin is death. There you go. That's pretty much what the book is about. If you guys want more, I'll make a part 2 to this, depending on the reaction. If you want more, or if you have questions, make sure y'all drop questions. But overall, man, that's what the book is about. If you want more, you're going to have to go read it and then drop some questions for me. If you did not pre-order or order your book, I will leave a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of The Woods. Make sure you get that. If you're Kindle readers, I'll have that link below as well. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.